All right, I'm almost up. I'm getting this up on Instagram. Be up in a second. All right, okay, hold on one second. Almost there. The music faded and I was all kerfuffled. Where's this? Okay, hold on, there we go. And we move to this one right away. Hey, we're up. Okay, good. Oh, and my overhead light is on because for some reason the lights on my keyboard have decided to just give out. So in the lights from this and the darkness of my desk, I can't actually, who cares? Hi, welcome. Good morning. You don't need my problems. You got enough of your own. Welcome, chat room. Hello. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Megaworldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Patreon.com/HalSparks. February 28th at Flappers. Patreon live streamed comedy show for our Patreon folks and for anybody who's a Patreon who joins us. Oh, my voice is a little bit quiet. I'll boost that up a little bit. Hopefully that makes it somewhat louder. I was trying to shave off some of the noise that I was getting because my mic, I was increasingly, those among us who are ever so slightly deafened were pushing me into the red, and they're like, make it louder. And so I was doing that on this end. Instead, you could just turn your shit up on your end. Try to fix it that way. Anyways, we'll work on that in a minute. Welcome to the show. Rob Glenn can't join us today because and I'm very jealous. Very jealous. He's taking a look at the new shop they're putting in Chicago. And I got to tell you, I'm nerded out. I'm excited for him, and I'm jealous, and I'm okay with that. I'm all right. I'm fine. Do I want a giant shop of my own where I can have all my tinkery gear so that it doesn't annoy my girlfriend by being on top of all the office countertops in my office? And yes, I do. I wish I had a dedicated room for 3D printers. I don't have that yet. One day. But a boy can dream, can't he? Now, a couple of things that I think tie in to our thing, and I spoke of this yesterday, dear friends, but this little thing right here, the California Social Media Bot and Foreign Account Transparency Act. It's a mouthful. I understand. I got to come up with a cute name. I was trying to come up with an acronym for Sparks. Too many letters, And as Hal, your human AI liaison, I should be better at this. But quite frankly, there are too many things to cover, and all the word acronyms I came up with that had an F in it weren't, let's just say, wouldn't appeal to comity in a legislative session. So the Fuckbots Act just wouldn't sail. I feel it, but. So anyways, that's on my Substack. If you want to take a look at it, it's the Hal Sparks Substack, Mega Worldwide. Just go to halsparks.substack.com and that kind of stuff. Yeah, why not call it Hal? Well, that's the thing. We'll get there eventually. But I just feel like that thing is proceeding apace. And I posted all the details of it, and I'm hoping that people will have notes, comments, that kind of stuff. We have, let's see if we've got any comments. Okay, so there is, here we go. Bucky Bettina wrote in here. Very well done. As requirements analyst in my day job, I try to locate words or phrases that could create assumptions or loopholes. I'll offer a few questions. What is the definition of a significant update? That's important. Good. Thank you. Change proper disclosure to proper disclosure of list all sections, subsections must be disclosed. And add U.S., state, or federal to government issue ID. That's a good one, too. Yeah. I don't think it has to be California strictly, right? which privacy laws would govern this section, perhaps built in a state or federal to ensure at least someone's still governing privacy if Trump sends it back to the states. This is true. Well, it would already be in the states because it's a California bill. But yeah, awesome. Hi, Hal. Drafting legislation is in my wheelhouse for my years in state legislator. While I pegged out the Stanford IQ test, I'm not anywhere near your 200 plus level. I make up for it with charm. I appreciate that, Vanessa. I think you probably do. I hope it's not presumptuous of me to offer my run my eye over this draft comments here or via email. Vanessa, please comment there at the site because I'll be able to move stuff to that. Rob Glenn and I are going to have another pass at this probably next Tuesday before we send this out. I also want to, I'm an old proofreader. He started his reading. There's a typo act, except in the context, it's act, capital A. Okay, thank you. I've done so many copy and pastes back and forth that sometimes it corrects back to other versions where I was just typing notes. So that's awesome. Keep them coming, guys. Buckeye, Bettina, thank you for those notes. I will give them a once over, a twice, a fives over, a fifths over. 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. I will fifth them over and add them to the thing. And Vanessa, please feel free to add your notes there or message me on if you're I guess you can subscribe even for free on Substack. You guys can throw that in there. So feel free. But I'm very excited about this, and I intend to continue to do these kind of things with my Substack. I feel like that's the value. Like I talk about everything, at least here. I talk about everything that you might need to learn from me verbally. And I feel like this is the easier way to absorb it a lot of times through video and audio. But for our bookish friends, a lot of people do like to read things online. Other than like getting an AI to take what I say during the show and then pipe it down to a written form, which would be kind of dickish, but I'm not against it. I don't have time to rewrite everything that I say on here. But what I would do with the Substack and what I think is valuable is that when I have a policy position or a piece of legislation, or if I can clarify a particular issue, I will use the Substack to do that if it requires greater writing, if that makes sense. Hope so. Also, let me look at this real quick, and I'll go to my dashboard. I also posted a new blog post called Does AI Matter? And this is kind of, I don't want that. I don't need I got a subscriber from it. That was nice. I guess maybe the AI folks are, let me see it. Let's see, view the post. There we go. So this was about something that I wanted to talk about today, and Rob Glenn and I go back and forth on this. And chat room, I know that sometimes we get into the reads around AI and what it's going to do. And I titled today's show "Learn to Cope," and that's I'm sure somebody in the chat room will know what that's a reference to. No doubt. But and I think I have a second chat room open on this one thing because I'm getting a doubling in my thing. It's probably in a Chrome window that's just hidden someplace, isn't it? Restream chat. There you go. This guy. Open that one, maybe. Yeah, that's what it is. I'm getting double in there. Okay, now it should be fine. So I wrote this about I'm always. I think it's lovely what AI is going to be able to do in terms of virtual stuff. Okay? I'm very excited about how it will kind of 10x people's productivity in creating software. But our lives are not lived in software. Our hearts are software while they're hardware at the same time. And there's only so much it can do. Now, what it can do is a lot. I mean, our whole world runs on software to some degree. But it's the hardware that makes the difference. And I've always been focused on, okay, until this thing can make a robot that can walk around and help me pick up around here, I'm just on my own. There's not going to be a guitar that strings itself or a robot that strings my guitars any fucking time soon. So I'm still going to have to do that part. And in the process of doing it, I'm still going to get the end of a guitar string stuck in my finger and go, motherfucker, and continue to do it. Because life happens in our flesh and blood and stone and metal and other mineral world, right? And so I'm always on the lookout for ways that AI is making ventures into the real world, right? So one of the things that came up was this thing called Matter Gen. And so I wrote a Substack about this because it stood out to me. Now, like biotech AI is another area of this. We've talked about like protein folding that's being done by these large language, well, not the large language models, but the machine learning systems that are the root of all this AI. So they're starting to figure out, chemicals that can be used in medicines. And one of the things they just discovered, and I'll show you this in a minute, they discovered what element of a protein makes it travel in the direction that it does. So what magnetizes it to, why does it attach to this cell versus this cell? Why would this kind of amino acid build this kind of muscle? And once you figure that part of it out, you could basically, I suppose, at some point in the very near future, create like all the nutrients a human being would need in a pill about this big. And then everything would be kind of programmed to go like, okay, these nutrients go to the brain, these go to the heart, these go to the lungs, and then everything else extra you eat that day takes care of the rest of your body or whatever. But your vitals are taken care of by this singular thing. Like that would be the kind of, whether it's 2 years down the line, 5 years, or 6 months, nobody can really know, because that's the human brain dealing with exponential change is always a tricky thing to figure out. It's a tricky path. But in this particular instance, Matter Gen is a thing that Microsoft came up with, and it's right now it works, but it's at the this is from the paper they wrote. Matter Gen is a diffusion model that operates on the 3D geometry of materials. Much like an image diffusion model generates pictures from a text prompt by modifying the color of pixels from a noisy image, Matter Gen generates proposed structures by adjusting the positions, elements, and periodic lattice from a random structure. The diffusion architecture is specifically designed for materials to handle specialties like periodicity and 3D geometry. So the shape of the molecule and how it comes together, think graphene, which has a very distinct molecular pattern, or atomic pattern rather, and periodicity meaning it could show up in the periodic table and exist in reality. It's not something, you can create a fantastical element by designing it, but once you start making it, poof, it lasts. How many elements have we heard of? And there are even a couple on the periodic table that only exist for a millisecond, right? So kind of useless, right? Aluminum does not exist in its pure form in nature. That's true, but a lot of things don't. Neither does steel or bronze or any of those things. They have to be created from ore, and you filter things out. And by the way, it's a really good question. Pam Matthews, ABQ, Albuquerque, ABQUERQUE, because are humans not natural? Is not everything we do natural? Is not, again, if an ape uses a stick to eat ants out of an anthill, is that not a natural act by that ape? And is every extension of what humans do, even if it includes the creation of AI, a natural thing because it occurred out of biological matter extending itself into the world and reshaping the world around it for its own survival or growth or whatever, right? So, it's a semantical argument, but it's a good one. So I wrote this out. You can take a look at it, but the primary elements of it is it's AI material-driven discovery is the primary thing that it can do. You can make new materials by asking what kind you want. I want something that's super thin and bulletproof and transparent. Those kind of things, like transparent aluminum in Star Wars or sorry, that was apocryphal. I'm sorry, I apologize. Star Trek, and I think it was Star Trek 4, right, when they had to take the invention of it was one of those time loop issues where they took the invention of transparent aluminum and gave it to humans back in this time so they could create a tank big enough to take a whale back in time on the ship and bring it back so that whatever. Okay, that was an invented molecule. Hey, what's happening, Stargal? So the ability to do this, to ask it to design a a molecule from scratch, a material that you could actually build things on. Like the extrapolated possibilities here are endless. Some of them may be mildly terrifying, depending on what they could be, how limited these things are in terms of what it will allow to be built. But if you're talking about baseline chemistry and you're talking about baseline material science, all bets are off, because it's not about, it's that old Jeff Goldblum thing in Jurassic Park. The science spent so much time thinking about whether they could, they never stopped to consider whether they should, and we're definitely, this is in the area of could, not should. Should is a decision, this was the same problem in Real Genius, where they're like trying to figure out, like, hey, let's figure, I figure you increase the output to 5 megawatts. Well, what's that good for? Making enormous Swiss cheese? And like, maybe the engineers the designers have already decided what it was for, and then they just tricked you guys into making a laser so that you could vaporize a human being from space, right? That was spoiler alert for one of my favorite movies. But this, he creates in Real Genius, he creates a chemical laser using liquid nitrogen in solid, not gaseous form. So it doesn't have to. It's a and so that the way they maintain that state of it, it kills it, it destroys itself as it lasers, but it solves their power problem and does all this stuff. And so now they have to work all summer in that movie to try and figure out the power problem. This would do it in an afternoon, right? To some degree. I mean, there's obviously some limits on what they could actually make and see if it's sustainable and that kind of stuff. But, and if you haven't seen Real Genius, I pity you. Pat Proft is a genius and wrote all your favorite jokes in Airplane. He wrote that. He wrote Real Genius. So anyways, love you, Pat. Applications across industries, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I try to write this like it was a real thing. I'm trying to be very dignified in my writing of these, but I called it the biotech of AI of steel, plastic, and concrete, because this is where you're really going to create. If you want to create a green concrete that that traps carbon while you make it, and you can use it to trap carbon in the atmosphere on purpose, that would be one of the possibilities of a replacement for plastic. Think of that. Think of not using naphtha, the residual oil stuff that we use to make plastic. What could you make a non-petroleum based plastic from something else that breaks down instead of months from now, like a cellulose thing, or maybe a year, or if it's in the sun, something that could last a decade, right? And then, of course, steel. How could you reinforce metals and create, if not an entirely new metal, a lattice work of metal that mixes with the metal you have to make a cheaper, more easily, readily available metal, harder and stronger and more resilient, and I guess that doesn't oxidize, whatever, that kind of thing. Okay, so the incredible possibilities here. So why this in particular? Well, that's where, again, AI moves out of the whole world of maybe one day, or a program, AI agents that do your accounting for you, which is like, okay, I guess. I mean, we're still in the realm of calculators at this point with most of it. I don't do the math. I type in the thing and it does it really quickly, but it's still a tool that I'm using to do something that has to be done. And I can't just hand the you can't just hand the calculator abstractly and go, do my shit, right? Like, that's not going to happen. You could do that with a person, but right now you're not quite there yet. And the AI agent thing, which we will get to in a minute, is the start of that. It's not there yet, but there you go. I was watching earlier today something because it struck me. Does anybody remember the hashtag learn to code shit chat room? Do you guys remember that stuff for a while? It was right up there with let's see. Yeah, this particular meme. There's literally a site called Know Your Meme. So there was this started in 2014. A lot of things started in 2014. Did you notice that? You know, like when you had 6 years of the Obama years behind you, and they were heading towards what would be the next thing, and then all things like suddenly there were all these social engineering, like meme-oriented shit that punched off. Okay, learn to code was something that like smart tech kids were throwing at everybody else who were like going into regular jobs, and they were going to be. It was kind of lined up with the whole crypto thing, right? It was the it was you know, like have fun being poor, the whole like Bitcoin folks. Remember that when they were all saying that? Okay, so there was a similar thing with learn to code. This is from Know Your Meme. Learn to code is an expression used to mock journalists who were laid off from their jobs, encouraging them to learn software development as an alternative career path. The phrase was widely posted on Twitter following the announcement of layoffs at BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post in late January 2019. The origin was in 2014. BuzzFeed News published a quiz called Should You Learn to Code, which provided links to articles recommending coding for people with various interests or professions. Several months later, in April 2014, in a response to a comment Mark Zuckerberg about the shifts in energy use that has led to many coal mines being closed and coal miners being laid off, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg at the Future of Energy Summit said, "You're not going to teach a coal miner to code." Mark Zuckerberg says you teach them to code and everything will be great. Over the next year, other media outlets published pieces on coal miners learning to code. On November 18th, 2015, Wired published, "Can you teach a coal miner to code?" The article took issue with Bloomberg's assertion, focused on several coal miners who were, in fact, learning to code. On January 24th, 2019, Jalopnik editor-in-chief Patrick George tweeted he believed in a special dedicated section of hell for people with anime profile pictures who tweet learn to code to journalists who've been laid off. That's this shit right here. Within 24 hours, the tweet gained over 1,300 likes and 260 retweets. The tweet was posted shortly after the announcement that BuzzFeed laid off 15% of its staff, and the Huffington Post had eliminated its opinion and healthcare editorial sections. Some have argued the phrase learn to code was adopted as a response to articles written about coal miners learning, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, and then it spread out, and people started saying it, and this dipshit did it. And there's a bunch of these folks. I'm told by a person known tweeting learn to code at a recently laid off journalist will be treated as abusive behavior and a violation of terms of service. This was at Twitter before Musk bought it. Biden at one point said he argued for the fact that coal miners could learn to code. Anybody who can go down 3,000 feet in a mine can learn to program, which the point is like if you can risk your life doing something like that, you can figure out coding. So this became like a way of them dunking on, it became very political, quite frankly. It became a way of dunking on reporters who'd been, fired or laid off when there were cutbacks at print and online journalists, like outlets like Huffington Post or New York Times or BuzzFeed or those kind of things. And a lot of these dudes, like, it was a dunk like have fun being poor. The same, it was right up there, and oftentimes you'd see them stacked. You'd see the crypto bros and the learn to code guys, there was a lot of overlap, almost around kind of Gamergate time, right? There was this like groundswell of like we're the smart guys, and fuck you. Okay, so fast forward to effectively 2024, but 2025. And this is what you're seeing in a bunch of these places. Like I'll show you a video. And this is, again, we'll talk about some of the politics of what's going on right now around this and the fact that Elon Musk is surrounded by a bunch of these dudes who, are, well, I'll show you. That, cut this off. Hold on one second. Hold on. Let me back this up. And I think I can reload this and it'll just, no, okay, back here. I'll open this video. this
I want to
is
talk about the state of the software.
okay. Hold on. And again, nothing against this dude. I'm not picking on him in particular. There's nothing about this particular guy, Steven Samuelson. I don't know who he is. He's only got about 5,500 subscribers. But this is a video he made 5 days ago. Okay, and he made a video, and rightly so, because he got his degree in computer science, and now to get a mid-level development job, you practically need a PhD, which is way too expensive for the job you're going to get, to the point where you're making trade school money for a Ivy League price tag, right? And it's fascinating, and again, like, I don't even want to discuss I have no idea what this dude's politics are, but it's not the point. This guy is right in the age range, and this video is the continuing collapse of the software engineering job market. And he's not alone in this. AI has now effectively erased a lot of these jobs. And not only has it erased these jobs, let me show you. Hold on. Let me show you this guy. This is another dude. Typecraft. And again, I have nothing against these dudes. They didn't do anything wrong. These guys are just responding to a shifting job market in the same way that, like, people, and these are not guys that I found that did the hashtag or any of that stuff. They're just in this industry, in this circumstance. And it's Jenny Penny saying, like the dot-com bubble. Not quite, because the dot-com bubble was about investors. These are about people who are educating themselves. This is a trade that vanished before their very eyes. Right? All CAD drafting is now cleanup and edits. Yeah, Pam, and that was a window of time. I remember when my dad was a hand drafter at the architectural firms he worked at before he formed his own company, and he spent his days. I used to sleep under my dad's desk when I was a kid, and I would go to work with him when I was like 8 years old. If he had to take me to work because my mom had to work late at the hospital, he still has the desk. It's glass. I'll show it to you the next time I'm at my dad's house, and I'm live streaming from there. I'll turn the camera. I think you might have been able to see it in the background if you watch the show when I've done the show from my dad's house. There's this piece of glass he got cut years ago, and this piece of metal that they took to a machine shop that his buddy had, and they bent these rods together and made this desk from scratch. My dad's had his drafting desk forever. He made it out of glass so he could light from below. The reason he made it out of glass was so smart, so that he could light the chart, the actual blueprint from below, so he could clearly see the lines he was drawing, because that's what a stickler my dad is for that kind of stuff. It's genius, really smart. But he was a hand drafter. When my dad got hired to work in Florida for a architectural firm that was working on Epcot Center, I think many of you know my dad worked on the underground at Epcot when I was a kid. He worked at hold on, have him on screen, the poor guy. My dad helped design the underground that allows them to remove rides and put new rides in and all that kind of stuff. They wanted, unlike Disneyland where you have to, or Disney World where you have to shut down huge sections of the park if you want to change it. Epcot Center was designed so that if you ever change a ride or update it, you can do it from underneath. So you just put a big curtain around the whole ride or whatever it was, and you could drive trucks in. It's a huge space underneath it. It looks like one of those salt mines where they store federal records underneath Epcot Center. And they designed it so that you could bring the teams in and you could take stuff out at the same time. So there would be routes that would bring in the materials and stuff to build the thing, and a route to take stuff out. So they dismantle a big chunk of it, and then they would bring the stuff in, and then anything that was required for the structure as they built it that was done, they could take that stuff out and never have to have two trucks trying to go through a narrow passage, so they could have these different lanes. It's brilliant. But my dad worked on that, and I would go down summers to live with my dad because my parents were divorced, and I lived in Kentucky with my mom, and I would spend summers on Singer Island in West Palm Beach with my dad. He had an apartment there. My sister and I would stay there. We'd just swim and hang out by ourselves, basically, while my dad was at work. But one day, I went to work with him, because they were having problems with their computer. It wouldn't start up. And they were just getting into CAD at that thing, and they had all these plans in it and all this kind of stuff, and they were having like real issues with and they didn't have their tech guy there or whatever the thing was. And I knew enough about it as a kid because my next door neighbor Kurt and I used to play on his computer, and so we knew enough C to get by, and we'd dick around with it. And so I went in there and I just kind of, while they were all arguing, I went into their little server room and basically just figured out what the problem was, which was effectively that it had a whoever designed it had this like fail-safe security that only they had put in there, but it was like a little patch they had made, and the little patch just got stuck essentially in the coding. If you look at it, you can see that it was just like there was some like a messed up line in the code where it just looped back on itself. And what he meant was it was trying that early version of like, if you enter your password wrong 3 times, it locks you out, right? And he just figured that won't happen. But that's effectively what happened. And so I just removed that cycle, and they were able to, like, whoever was typing it in had locked it up. And I was like, put in the password now, see what happens. And it just unlocked it. I just took that piece of line out that created the lock, just erased it. And then I had to tell the guy, and he typed it back in, was essentially what it was. It was sort of stupid, but it was like I didn't have to code it. I just had to erase a piece that you could see loop back in this section of code. All right. And I was the genius of the fucking, right. Then they got hacked. That's right, YouTube. No, it was offline. They weren't even attached. There was no internet at the time, right? This was all offline. They couldn't even have a guy remotely log into it, right? This is pre-war games. Okay? This is 1982? Yeah, something like that. 81 maybe even? Shit. So anyways, like, my next door neighbor, Kurt Troutwine, who was my best friend growing up, and who passed away, some of you know, a little over a year ago, of cancer. He was, I knew him my whole life. He's like the person I'd known the longest in my life, other than my family. Was a computer programmer, and the reason he was a computer programmer was because his dad was the chairman of the school board in Kentucky, and let's just say a very southern dude, had some attitudes about other people that wasn't necessarily in line with how I lived my life, and arguably how his son would ultimately live his. But because Apple wanted to get computers into schools, one of the ways they greased the wheels was that they handed computers out to people in positions of influence. And said, hey, give this a try. Take this home. See how easy it is to use. Try it out yourself. And he got one. And so Kurt had this Apple II in the house, and it used a cassette tape as a hard drive. And we messed around with it all the time. And if we wanted to load a program, it took like a half an hour, and you had to code it in and run it. And then you had to play this like cassette tape, and then you had to back out of the room quietly. And because if the button came up or you bumped the floor, it was like receiving a fax. It would skew the whole thing, and the code would be fucked up because it was literally on a cassette tape. It was crazy. So he made his life on coding. He later and lived his entire life as a programmer, made a good living, and got married. He was gay. He and his husband moved far away from Kentucky for a myriad of reasons. But as a programmer, he could count on that as a life. That was a really difficult gig to get. And you could build up your skill, and then you could prove that skill on a standard with everybody else, and then all of a sudden, John Henry time. Right now, everybody around him, who's not a senior programmer or a mid-level developer or something, is kind of fucked. Like, the only way you're going to get any experience is if you start from scratch in your own shit. Like, just building your own things, your own app or whatever. It's startup or bust. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so this dude's video, which he did 4 days ago, is called "Developers Are Getting Screwed." Now, most of us would think, okay, like software developers, like companies that create stuff, they're getting their IP stolen. That's not what he's talking about. He ends up talking about entry-level software engineers are basically fucked for two reasons. One, AI is doing all the startup level stuff, and mid-level engineers and people like that who can work from home that were higher ups at another company who got kicked out will take these, as long as they can work from home, will do entry-level coding for fucking nothing. And they'll do multiple jobs at once because they're really skilled and they can whip this shit out pretty quickly. And so there's no situation where, let's see if they have this thing or whatever. There's a lot of coffee. All these guys talk about coffee. So yeah, Launch Academy was one of these things where people could go and, quote, learn to code. And, do these kind of like speed run learning situations. And they just did a pause last year on their little immersive boot camp because there's a couple reasons. One, that everybody's learning on their own because there's a lot more alternative ways of learning shit. But the other one is that you can't guarantee you're gonna get a job out of it anymore. That stuff where they like, hey, do this and it'll you can put this on your resume. Doesn't fucking matter. Water Goddess says it sucks, but it's kind of story as old as time, right? Like the people that clean soot off walls in homes, chimney sweepers, horse trainers. Exactly. This is exactly that thing. But chimney sweeps and there's still an industry for chimney sweeps, right? Because people still have chimneys and fires still start because of chimneys. Now they're better designed. They don't get clogged up. People, when you get a better flue and all that kind of stuff, it eliminates a lot of the issues you might have had when they were just stacks of fucking stone back in the day, right? But they still kind of exist. Horse trainers are way more limited because they're not used for transportation, but it's a specialty thing. There's no situation where this becomes a specialty thing. There's not this, oh, he's great with this kind of code. That's out the fucking window. And not in a matter of years, right? It's a matter of, this is happening in months. Entire swaths of this economic ladder that, by the way, all these guys were dunking on other people and going, fuck you, learn to code. That crowd, not these guys I'm showing you. I want to be really clear about this, but because they're just in the same kind of industry as where that came from. And a lot of those dudes are like spiraling now because they're the chimney sweeps, when everybody's putting in one of those fake glass fireplaces in their house that it has a vent, not a chimney, and it runs on natural gas, those, like the new modern fireplaces that have nothing to do with a chimney at all. That's who these guys are. These guys are chimney sweeps in that era. Whole new developments being laid in. People have a fireplace and it's fake logs with gas and glass shards in the base of it, and you turn it on with a switch and light it with an electric button, and then you turn it off using Alexa, right? And Jenny Penny says the world needs tradesmen. You're absolutely right. It does. But it's interesting that tradesmen might go back to, we've got all this electronics in our house, but I have a real blacksmith. I have a blacksmith that you work with to get stuff made for your home. So all the latches in your house are made by hand and those kind of things. That's where that's going to go. Anybody who has that kind of a skill base, it's almost the opposite of what, like Biden was saying, like if you can work in a mine, you can learn to code. Well, right now, nothing that works through code can handle a mine anymore. So humans are going back to that. But there will be the physical work artisan craftsmanship, those kind of things. That's the only thing that's going to survive this shit. Because once you talk about like plastic toys and widgets and shit like that, it could all be automated. So here's the other thing. Let me show you this guy. And I want to, at the very least, I want to show you, hold on, shut up. I want to show you this guy's, will it show his, yeah, okay. So on the other side of this is just a video, make what you will of it, all right? See this, that's Eve from Wall-E. I don't know why I chose that one or whatever. How to build a startup team of AI agents. There's a thing called N8N, which is an agent building AI, where you create these little systems and then you use these other things to kind of implement it. OpenAI is where you get it to do all the sort of AI calculating. This sets up the mousetrap, and then yeah. So in this, he see if he shows this whole thing. Like there he is.
Out writing code.
Yeah. Okay.
This was my startup team in 2024. We were 9 people in total. But this year,
by the way, they all look exactly like him, and none of them are on camera.
we're only 4 people left. I replaced more than half of my team with AI agents.
Think of that, like this scale of business. Now, again, I would also like to say that a lot of these videos that you'll see on YouTube about this kind of stuff and what agents and that kind of stuff can do so far is kind of bullshit. It still requires way too much tweaking for most people. But we're this close. And the only people who do this are the people who are just like me, who dig into this shit and get way too involved in it. Okay? By the way, welcome to Friday AI. I'm Hal Sparks. This is Hal Sparks Mornings, Megaworldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. I'm leading to something in this. But the learn to code guys are going to have to learn to cope. You're going to have to find out. You know what I would say to the learn to code guys? Learn to fucking talk. I mean, it is now time to start developing a personality, because all the jobs that can be done without personality, human interaction, bedside manner, as it were, are fucking gone. They're all going away.
And in this video,
even Trump's Doge team are all putting themselves out of a job. None of them can talk or interact with normal people. None of them can build relationship-based companies. Musk is terrible at it himself. If he didn't have that, like, enough fuck you money from apartheid, he would have never had the cushion base to like try any of the shit he's done. And again, government contracts that kept him afloat when he was over promising and under delivering, which is always. That means social anxiety is a disability then. Not necessarily, because you can have social anxiety and be real. I'm not talking about social anxiety. I'm talking about being an asshole. and that's where a lot of these guys are just writing off other human beings or being sort of intellectually classist with everybody around you, which is what nerds used to be, right? That's why people didn't like them initially, was they were intellectually classist.
I'll show you how you can create your own AI startup team. And yes, you can do this without writing code.
Every
That's the key.
business is going to have an AI agent that their customers can talk to.
Agents will begin to deliver on hype. I got to tell you, Katie,
The opportunity for agents is gigantic, as we
AI
know.
agents are AI systems that can do work for you.
Hundreds of millions and billions of different AI agents. Billions of different AI agents.
Whether you think this is good.
So, whether you think it's good or bad, doesn't matter. It's coming, right? Is the point. So all these learn to code dudes are fucked. Well, Pam says the job will be AI whisperer, and that is sort of what's known as like a prompt engineer. which is now a job in and of itself. Like there are a bunch. Like, here you go. Learn Coursera even has a thing. Learn prompt engineering online. And what they mean is, I have no use for a protocol droid. It means learn how to talk to a computer because it won't give you exactly what you want, and knowing how to craft a prompt, understand how the particular large language model you're working with understands language, and being able to speak its, understand how to get the best result out of it. Project managers aren't going to have a problem either, although they're going to be competing directly with, or they will be valuable for their unique approach, not because they know what they learned in school. Right? So refining the prompt, it often requires trial and error, blah, blah, blah. This is what they will do. Okay, so Seymour, here you go. Zero-shot prompting, providing the model. That's how you learn. By the way, this is techniques in prompt engineering. This is how you learn to prompt something. Zero-shot means it wasn't trained on this particular thing, so you go after it, and you ask it to do something it's not trained to do for a specific one. Doge bags get too much credit. Anyone given login credentials can type update, accounts payable, set, release payment equals false. Right. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's not a lot of work. That's why I think Jenny Twisted Stepsister, I think that's why people are right to be concerned, because it doesn't take a high-level hacker once you get in the building in a lot of these situations. A rudimentary one. The hard part is getting past the access point. But if the president just unlocks the fucking door and gives you a password, you don't have to be. You're not a hacker at that point at all. You're just a fuck around, right? That's like calling a bank robbery a hack, right? You didn't have to shoot the locks off the place. You walked right in the goddamn door, pulled your gun out, and said everybody on the floor. That's not that. That didn't require skill. Getting out, interestingly enough, is the hard part in robbing a bank, which is, if you're going to maximize your effectiveness as a bank robber, your entire planning should be largely based on getting out, your exit plan, which is why the movie Quick Change is so fantastic. Have you guys seen Quick Change? Unfortunately, it has Randy Quaid in it, but Bill Murray and Gina Davis are fantastic in it. This is, talking robot is essentially what they're talking, what they mean in this situation, and the prompt engineering part of it will be a job, but only for a short time. It's only going to go so far. Hold on one second. Make sure this is all good. There we go. And we're up. Trump said in his comments during the Modi press conference that we are years ahead of everyone in AI. If that's true, why is the Chinese effort getting so much widespread good press? Largely because of ignorance. Plainsman had a question. That was what. And if you have any questions about this stuff, please fire away. Ask away. And Andrea, you can put them in the staff chat. I'll keep that open in there. But the reason most of these things happen is because of ignorance. People have they believe what they're told about something that is highly complex. Trump just banned felon on federal grounds. You mean Elon? Really? Is that what you mean? So, are you joking with the word felon? You mean Elon? He can't be on federal grounds? Okay. But hold on. Let's see. Let me bring up some. I want to show you guys something in regard to that. The DeepSeek itself, I call it DeepSuck and DerpSeek and all that kind of stuff. But it was initially, basically, they took one of the ChatGPT models that was already open to the sort of moving into the reasoning capability element, the highest one. They paid for Pro, essentially, and then they used it to train their model, which is, again, something that is going to happen, right? It is something that, and it gets easier and easier because, again, once you've built this fucking thing, the programming on it gets, here, that's what I'll show you, is the Hugging Face thing. So I've shown you guys Hugging Face before. And let me go back to here. There you go. So it's, yeah, there we go. There is, okay, so most people think of, like, there are 5 LLMs in the world. There's ChatGPT, there's Claude, Perplexity, some of these you might have heard of, Gemini from Google. Hugging Face is a site that hosts AI models. Okay, this is the, here, I'll show you the name of it. There you go, Hugging Face. Isn't that adorable? And it literally is just based on the emoji of the hugging face. That's where it comes from. And there are, it's a place for programmers and people that work within AI stuff to, let's see, I think we can open these up. There you go, it's starting to wake up again. That in all of these, you can, if you create a model, let's go to just models. There you go. People will not only take the ones that exist, but they will take an existing open source model and they will build another one on top of it, or they'll use Flux, which is one of the ones that people use for image generation, and they'll take it and then they'll train it themselves on stuff they have access to, or on a loop of stuff, or they'll create an AI that feeds images from, I don't know, their Pinterest back and forth into one of these over and over again to train it on a specific thing, or their anime collection. So it really does anime images really well and those kind of things. I'm speaking, in broad, silly layman's terms, but you get my point. You can take any of these models, including the DeepSeek R1, which is right here, open source. It is a text generation model that reasons, and you can download it and you can run it on a local system, and it doesn't reference back, insofar as we know. I wouldn't do it, but insofar as we know, it does not reference back to a Chinese system. It does it all locally, internally. I'm sending it to all the Discords I'm in. Okay, Alyosha. Okay, excellent. Can we say thin skin? This is what Alyosha was talking about. I see. In light of recent events, until further notice, I am directing all staff, operations, personnel, cabinet members of the White House visitors to stop using the word felon while inside the White House or on White House grounds, whether in conversation or in writing. Failure to comply with this directive will result in immediate expulsion and or disciplinary action. That's hilarious. So felon bugs him. Good to know. Thank you for letting us know, dipshit. We'll just call him Donald Felon from now on. I think that works. Donald Felon of the New York Felons. For Elon. Can we say for Elon though? Like F Elon? That works. Well, we won't say felon. We'll say F Elon. Then people know what we're saying. Such a fucking... Anyways. All right. So see all these kind of things? See all these models? Okay. You can take any of these. There's Black Forest Labs Flux 1. It's a development model. And it does images, right? You tell it to do stuff, and it's those kind of things. And you can... There you go. You can install it using like your terminal on your computer. And you can run it virtually using their version, which creates a Flux pipeline to their version, I believe, in this situation, on their server system. Or you can just download it and use it on yours, which will be slower, but it'll still do the same thing. Yeah. Also, yeah, that might not, is that real? Do we have verification, Andrea, that it's real? That it's that it, like, it's not just a punking that's going on? That's entirely possible. Okay. I do think F Elon is funny though. We should just start saying that all the time. Like F. Elon. Anyways, there are tons of these, and you can download them, and then you can use them to make your own models. because you can stack what's already been done with these on top of another one and another one and another one. And at some point, because it's sort of semi-randomized and because it's built on a very dense programming structure, it'll stumble upon possibly an advanced version of itself, right? And you go, okay, this is the new model. This is the update. I'm going to take this version that it created of itself and go, this is the new one. This is the important one. And then you move on from that. And that's exactly what happened, in my opinion, with DeepSeek. And most people think that now too. I'd like to say, for the record. That's the general consensus, is that DeepSeek, the Chinese model, was just lifted off another model, and they put it out as a PR attack on, to kind of almost as a social engineering attack. Did anybody watch the segment that Rachel did last night on the like social engineering defense stuff that was going on, where they were going to push back against attempts by foreign companies to manipulate the American electorate by either phishing attacks or which is the kind of like above table stuff, and then the below table stuff, which is just like funding fake BLM organizations or funding fake left wing organizations, and then funding fake right wing ones, and then telling them all to show up on the same street corner, and then going, America's society is falling apart, and funding specifically funding their the ratcheting up of violent rhetoric on both sides of the, creating the horseshoe. I'm surprised he wouldn't just call it Operation Horseshoe. Make the left overlap with the right and make everybody fight. Is the goal of these social engineering impacts, And then DARPA was working on this, and one of the companies they hired was an offshoot of Reuters, and so Elon Musk thinks that Reuters was getting money from DARPA, when in reality it was this subsidiary company that does these kind of things. And again, I would argue that the release of DeepSeek was a social engineering attack. It was a fake model built on other models, and they released it. All of Jill Stein's campaign, I would argue, is a social engineering attack, if that makes sense. All the, like, them, Qatar paying, somewhere in the order of $5 billion on American campuses to directly influence the kind of shit we saw on the campuses, the anti-Israel stuff under the table. Like, that's a social engineering attack. It's okay if you come to those ideas on your own, if you read a bunch of stuff and you come to it on your own. But if 8 of the people in your group of 10 are being funded by somebody else to pretend they give a shit about what you really give a shit about, you're still the victim of a social engineering attack, because you will be more violent and bold and believe that there are more people supporting your system and your belief system and your attitude than there actually are. And so you'll be less deferential to another group's argument, because you think maggots fell for this shit too. That's what QAnon was. QAnon was a social engineering attack, a foreign social engineering attack. People like Mike Flynn and stuff helped build it up, and it was a mix of like Iranian bots and Macedonian hacker farms and shit like that. And it didn't even have to come from the same place. They didn't even have to coordinate. They got the whiff of it, and then everybody could just work whatever nerve they could. Those are social engineering attacks. And America is more susceptible to those because we have a wide open press, and we have a wide open media landscape, and a wide open internet, okay? And one of the ways they pried it open even wider was that you accuse everybody of that's trying to make you aware of it as disinfo and misinfo of being part of a scheme to, to not let you express yourself or something like that. They're anti-free speech and going, look, I don't care what the fuck you believe, but I want to make sure that if I'm fighting with 10 accounts online, I know that they're 10 Americans who actually vote in the country. Otherwise, what the fuck do I care about people outside the country and their attitude about a fucking, I don't know, a farm bill, right? If they're manipulating it because they're trying to undermine the agricultural base of the United States or build up their own, right? You've got to be aware of that. And so you should have some awareness of that. And as we get more into the AI part of it, it's gotten easier and easier. You used to have to hire a bunch of people who were relatively good at English and do all these things. Now AI makes it super fucking simple. And X, I would argue, is basically just a gathering point for social engineering attack bots. And DeepSeek is one of those attacks. This thing right here. It is as models go, is it advanced? Yeah. Is it hugely advanced? No. It's a sub-tier, third or fourth gen below what OpenAI has, below what Google's Gemini does, below what, maybe it's at parity with Microsoft's free versions or something like that. But the only difference is it showed you what it was thinking. It showed you its reasoning while it did it, and people were like, ooh la la. But its reasoning wasn't any better, or it wasn't advanced. It just was the first to show its work. And so people were like, okay, I like being able to check my work. And that was that. The issue was, of course, is that people were using the app, which is not the model. The model is what's trained to do certain things, and the app itself is the filter by which the Chinese government allows you to use it on their servers. And what it takes, that app, it's not the DeepSeek that takes stuff from your phone, it's the app you put on your phone. So while people are starting to become aware of the fact that TikTok is malware, get it off your fucking phone. And if you're going to use it on a computer, you should have an isolated computer, I think, to do that. On DeepSeek, the model is not the problem, it's the app. And the app, by the terms of service, allows them to just scoop up all your shit and feed it into DeepSeek. And all the same people who are like, they're using my personal information to train OpenAI's ChatGPT don't seem to give a shit that it's being sucked into DeepSeek. It seems silly. But it's still a fourth tier level AI. Right Said Rob says, all AI takes your data. Not quite. There are material limits on what it can do, and because there's a reason why AI doesn't like the AI companies don't necessarily want to just scoop all data that it gets. Like that, they don't want to just gather everything that's thrown at them, because it would be too easy for someone to punk that system. Right? You would just front load it with racism. Like what happened with that Google chatbot that was on Twitter for like a week and then started being a race realist and then turned straight up racist. Okay, that's because it was too open. And so in the openness of it, they're going to go, okay, there's like two levels of filters. We're not just going to scoop everything up that everybody has, because if the AI starts to believe everything that it scoops off everyone's hard drive, if it stumbled upon a network of pedophiles, you don't want their stuff to start showing up in the image gen. Do you know what I mean? Just because it's a large swath of stuff. So it's going to have filters on what it takes in, and it's smart to stiff arm the average data that comes in. It's the apps that take your shit, not the AI itself. Right? Or should I say they have the ability, it's under their discretion. It's also, I would say, Right Said Rob, under your discretion, if that's clear. Because you can tell it what you don't want to have in it and what you do. Now, most of the time in these business situations is they are dumping this stuff, people are, whether it's Gemini or these other systems, people are dumping basically all of their company's databases into this shit like a fucking meat grinder and just going, I don't know, make me some shit, right? I don't care. And that's up to them. They can do that. But you've got to be aware that once it's in there, it's in there. And again, most of this stuff isn't going to leak out as proprietary information. It's going to be regurgitated as other stuff when people ask it a question. It's not going to go, oh, by the way, your competitor uses paprika, and that's the secret ingredient to their soda. They sneak that in a small amount, and it gives it that sharp, tangy flavor that everybody likes, but they wouldn't tell anybody because paprika sounds like ew in soda, but it actually works. Like that, it's not going to do that. It's what it's going to do is, crank out like alternate possibilities for what your recipe would be. If you want to add it and make it tangy, it will say this much paprika might do it, and you'll go ooh, and you won't realize that your competitor actually does that. Would you agree that USA needs to pass laws to protect user data, someone like the GDPR did in EU? I would, and we largely have. The difference between the rules in the EU and the rules here is that in the United States you have the right to give away your shit. And the EU is basically saying you don't have the right to give away your shit. And that's an issue. Because it also limits what you'll be able to do with the software and the sites that you're using. That you can't acquiesce to those things. So what's the difference? Well, here's the biggest issue with the EU and the United States. Is that the EU is going to use all of the US-based AIs as the root of all the shit they're going to do. And they might shave off some shit in how it's allowed to talk in its bottleneck with everybody else. But they're not going to amount to it's not going to affect the model itself. So all their safety levels are all surface. And they're going to, hold their nose and use the American AIs that are trained on everything. Just like the Chinese. The Chinese are using the American AIs that are trained on everything to build theirs. And then they just, design their internal ones to forget everything bad that China's ever done. Right? The EU will do a similar kind of thing. Like, if you ask it what a swastika is and ask it to make one and put it on somebody's forehead because you're trying to make an image of them that looks like they were in the Manson family, it'll say no because of the rules of the EU about Nazi imagery, perhaps. So if you're using the ones that are available there, that they might set rules to that. I don't know that even that they're trying to do that, but that seems like the ballpark of where they're going with this. The point I'm trying to make is that see all these. This isn't even close to. Yeah, here you go. Let's go to all of them. We can scan through these. Flux is one of the development models. Hunyuan is a Chinese 3D to take 2D text to 3D and image to 3D generation, where you take a picture and you put it in there and it'll make a 3D image out of it. There's a chat Janus model that you can download. There's another text to speech one. There's a bunch of those. And I have a profile on here. I haven't designed anything, and I don't necessarily have any. Questions. Yes, comes from Midas. Comes from Midas Touch. Do now see it on. Oh, you don't see it on any news media right now. This, yeah, okay. Well, again, I'm not going to dive into whether or not that's real or not, but I like the felon thing or whatever. That's hilarious. I doubt it. I gotta say, I would fool me once, you won't get fooled again. So, in this particular instance, but so all of these are available to download onto a computer and then train if you want to. And if you had hundreds of computers, you could train one of these really fast. But if you only have a dozen computers, you could do it in a reasonable amount of time. And in a month's time, you'd have your own sort of massive LLM. And that's what's happening. All this is stacking. And it's stacking so fucking fast that it's putting guys like this, where they would have, this isn't his real office. This is his desk, and this is like a fucking Zoom background. None of this is real. And he's basically like, how do you work on this? And he doesn't sit across a desk from a fucking Eva talking to it. This is all a cartoon of how he does it. But this is how he just basically designs this thing. If this, then that. Now, anybody know, someday will you please address the CSAM of the new hardware that makes screenshots of everything you do on your computer, please? Which new hardware, Cosmic Rose? Hold on. Yeah, I'll get to that in 1 second. Because hold on. I'll show you that in just 1 minute. The issue here is that, does anybody know if this, then that? Let's see. Sorry. Let me try to do this. Yeah. Yeah, here it is. IFTTT. There we go. So some people might be familiar with this. It's been around for a long time. If this, then that. IFTTT. IF triple T? I don't know. Does anybody have a nickname for it? Whatever. It's been around for a long time. And effectively, this is like the dumber version of agents. That's been, the more like rudimentary tool-based idea. That if I get an email from this account, then go to my hue lights and make them turn orange, so I know that I got an email response, right? It seems pretty understandable. If you use Apple shortcuts, they're a version of if this, then that. Okay? It's been around for a long time. There you go. Here's one. Update your Android wallpaper with NASA's image of the day. So NASA posts this. As soon as it happens, it changes the if NASA updates their image of the day when they do it, then go into my phone and update the wallpaper. There you go. Quickly create events in a Google Calendar. So if something happens, if this event occurs, or if I get a notification of an event, add it to my calendar. If this, then that, right? It's very rudimentary, very understandable. And this stuff's been around forever. And webhooks is like one of the things that makes it the closest to what you would say is AI agents right now. But I would argue that these automations, the only thing that makes this any different with AI agents is that AI agents can write a response. Right? They can, if you go, hey, respond to that email, put this in my calendar and say, got it. Right? Or read parts of the email and summarize it for me, and send me a text that you've done this, and in that give me the summary. The summary part of it and stuff, that's the AI part. But the rest of this shit's been around for a while. Houseparks, have you seen the AI that creates a printable 3D model from text? I've seen a few of them. I don't know which one you're talking about, MF Creations. I've been wanting that for a long time myself because I suck at CAD. And I just haven't had time to learn it, quite frankly. I'm busy. Got a lot of shit going on, right? So here's the thing. Do you know how much shit you can get into with this stuff? Do you have any idea how much shit you can get into with this? You could create with just this, not even the AI agent part. If Elon Musk posts something on X, then respond to it on this account with the middle finger emoji. You don't even need AI to do that. IFTTT will do that. You can make something that does that. You could fill a folder with the worst pictures with pictures of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, and then you put it on the cloud someplace. Just make a fake Google account that you associate with the password or whatever, but it's not really associated with you. And then you set it up so that every time you post something, this Twitter account you set up posts a picture of Trump and Epstein, or the one of Ghislaine Maxwell and Elon Musk, right? You can do that with this. You don't even need AI to do it. The difference is AI could generate variations of that image, to make them look like they're bobsledding together or something like that. But the essential essence of this is not difficult at all. That's what I don't think people understand, is that you stack something like IFTTT, IFTY, is that what you call it? IFTY? IFTTY? I don't know if I'm going to call it IFTTY, the regular. I don't. It's not that I don't like the sound of it, X1011, but IFTY works fine. But combining this with an AI, for example, which is what the N8N thing is this dude is talking about, is effectively what's happening. That you take this, you combine it with a medium-level ChatGPT, and in the Rob Glenn rule that 99% is plenty, you can create your own fucking army of bots and shit. And the reality is, at some point, a Democratic slacktivist like myself is going to sit down and start cranking these things out as a hobby. And by the midterm elections, they're going to be a lot of there'll be a big free speech fight online about how dare these Democrats release all these bots to fuck with me. Have you ever tried playing a tabletop role-playing game with ChatGPT as the dungeon master? Not yet. I totally want to, but I have it's a time thing. I spend so much time studying and watching the stuff that I have to deal with on the show that the only thing I really get to do that's leisurely is music. I practice guitar and practice singing and write songs and that kind of stuff and string and fix my guitars, but everything else has been pushed by the wayside because between family and the show, that's my fucking day. That's my whole life. At some point, it would be nice if we're not white knuckling the fucking government after Trump, sloughs off this mortal coil and joins the choir invisible. I would love to get back to that, and there's going to be a shit ton of it. Now, to the point. Let's see if I can bring up an image that helps. So the CSAMs are still have to ask permission. I think what you might be talking about is the Gemini. Okay, so. Gemini, in the Gemini workspace, oops, get out of here. Yeah, there we go. Chat, supercharge, Google, there we go. Yeah. Free tiers of fantasy. Yeah, okay. I don't want to go to Tech Radar for this. Let me go to here. So, a couple things. One is Google has announced, let's see, I'll bring it up on here. Gemini Advanced. Where's this guy? Blow the thing up, you goofball. Why would I want a small image of it, you idiot? Okay, here we go. So, they have just announced that Gemini Advanced will remember your conversations. Continue the conversation. No catch-up required. So one of the problems with using Gemini was, as you used it, it didn't remember what you talked about last time. And if you stopped in the middle of something or you had something to do, it would just you'd had to start from scratch every fucking time. I went into Gemini to try and draft part of the legislation that I was doing because I ran it through a bunch of them to see if it would give me different responses and how it would respond as far as loopholes it found or mistakes or any of that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll run it up against Perplexity and Gemini and OpenAI and all these things. And every time I would come back to Gemini, it was like, who are you? What? I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, fuck me. We got to start from scratch again. I almost felt like I had to copy and paste the entire previous conversation. Go, hey, here's our previous conversation. Start from here, which is a pain in the ass. But even then, you'd have to save it. It was just dumb. So that's now, it is now smart enough it can now remember stuff. It has already, ChatGPT already does this. Now, here's something cool, though. You know how nonprofits are kind of getting screwed by Trump's USAID attacks? Well, guess what? A lot of the work that is spent on nonprofits, as far as paid staff, for example, can now be done with AI. Now you say, okay, well, should people have a job working at a nonprofit? I suppose. But if you can make it like if you could take a nonprofit and basically make it non-cost, wouldn't that be better? And that so that other people can have a job, and if they want to volunteer, they're not just doing kind of the rudimentary bookkeeping and that kind of stuff. They're doing more interactive stuff, or they're using their creative mind as opposed to just being run-of-the-mill, I don't know, like keyboard jockeys, for a lack of a better phrase. So the best of Google AI is now included in Workspace with significant nonprofit discounts. All right, yay, that's nice. Keep client and donor data secure, stay compliant with board and sector regulations, save on technology costs with significant nonprofit discounts, can continue to use the $0 a month Workspace for nonprofits, plan to access the Gemini app and Notebook LM, or they can upgrade to an advanced Google Workspace edition to access more generative AI features, and nonprofits can get discounts up to 75% of the standard price, starting at $3.50 a month directly in their Workspace admin thing or whatever. If you have a Google, okay, this is the Google Workspace for nonprofits. Cool. Again, this is the way these things are going. Yay, Andrea. This is the way stuff is going. Get used to the idea. So let's say you've always wanted to start a nonprofit. I used Gemini to write a script for me for an interview I wanted to do with my grandfather about the Korean War. It was okay. I would not have hired somebody to do that, and now I'm getting ready to actually try to do this. I would not have even thought to try something without the help of to help MW with the script part of it. Suggest types of music and transitions. I'm excited to try it. Yeah, Water Goddess. Here's the thing. Most of the time, from a creative standpoint, it's a jumping off point. So don't be afraid of any of this stuff, and the free versions are incredible, and they're very helpful, and I don't make a dime off of any of these. I'm not selling any of these. I'm not trying to get anybody on board in anything. I'm telling you largely that they are coming, and they will help you, the free version. So these are some of the nonprofits that are using it. Climate Ride use Gemini to accelerate a website rebrand by months and experiment with new ways to make annual campaign emails more engaging. Dutch Bamboo created a custom research digester gem capable of analyzing. And by the way, Google calls their personal chat GPTs, they're, the chat GPTs you make yourself on, they call them gems. It's adorable. Capable of analyzing complex publications, synthesizing key trends, and providing actionable insights, enabling people with no programming experience to harness the power of AI. Very lovely. Okay, and they probably just borrowed somebody else's version of that. They didn't have to do it themselves. Erica's Lighthouse accelerated content and curriculum development with Gemini by generating ideas for program names, concepts, and themes, which freed up time to focus on furthering their nonprofit mission. Latino Center for Midlands. Of the Midlands, beg your pardon, implemented Gemini as a built-in AI assistant to answer employee questions, help brainstorm and reduce decision-making time. Okay, these are all things that they're able to do. Very cool. Dutch Bamboo sounds like a designer cannabis strain. It totally does. The point is, this is still in the virtual world, unlike the Matter stuff that I was showing you earlier. And this is kind of blazed by. I know this is different from the normal show because Rob's not with me, and it reminds me of the old days at the morning show where I'm just me by myself talking long form about some of these things, but they're crucial to the conversation that people are going to have. I don't want anybody to be afraid to use these things, because if you are, then only the people who we don't want using them will use them. Rob has they're opening a new shop, a fabric, quite frankly, I don't know fully what they're doing with the shop. It's one of his tooling shops where they build stuff. They make things, a lot of additive and subtractive manufacturing. And he's building a new shop for that. So they had to go look at a space and that kind of thing. That said, where are we? This guy right here. Hold on one second. I'm going to go to the. MIT has a pretty good AI page that I go to on the regular. Yeah, there we go. Their news page, I guess. Yeah. So here's a couple of things. Whoops, back up here. This was one of the things I was showing earlier, because for me, this is all about where the rubber hits the road. This is, how many, creating speeches and content and all that shit. It's fine, but I don't need any help doing that. And it doesn't interest me. I see non-creatives going, okay, this makes me a little more creative. Good for you. But I don't need to subvert my own originality at all. But I will say that there are elements of it. Here you go. Hold on. I'll show you these where it's really about the material world. Living in a material. And let's see, one more thing, and I will show you these guys. Yeah, here we go. I think there's that one. Yeah, here you go. So here's just a few things that you won't really hear about, and everybody just trying to find a new way to do like office work with AI, because that's what most of this shit is about. People want to make ad campaigns and get rid of office work. Do you have a personal AI ChatGPT that you prefer using? Well, here's the thing. I dance around to all of them because I'm kind of always checking them. I will say that I am used to having conversations with OpenAI because with ChatGPT, just because it's been the most conversational for the longest, and because it's only available in that form for an hour a day, that when I do use that stuff, usually when I'm driving, I'll have a conversation with it. If I'm trying to learn something or specifically get questions to a certain answer about something. And I have some very, very peculiar questions sometimes. Coordinating stuff that nobody's ever really written about, or if they have, it's just like dense academic papers hidden away someplace about, you know, the comparative structures of, you know, technological advancement and immigrant work and that kind of stuff that I've spoken about here. Like nobody's ever done I'm writing a paper on that now, actually, for my Substack to try and explain where things are headed in that regard. But anyways, where am I? Okay, here we go. So this AI model deciphers the code in proteins that tells them where to go. I mentioned this earlier. Whitehead Institute and CSAIL researchers created a machine learning model to predict and generate protein localization with implications, listen to me, implications for understanding and remedying disease. Proteins are the workhouse. I mean, it's a big, dense paper. But the important thing is that they have figured out how to sort of direct proteins to and from things. And by doing that, you can create more bioavailable proteins, and you can also create proteins that will that can attach themselves to a disease molecule and weigh it down, for lack of a better phrase, on the quick. Okay, here you go. Expanding robot perception. Associate Professor Luca Carlone is working to give robots a more human-like awareness of their environment. This is using AI to have them understand conceptually the environment around them with their LiDAR and their visual spectrum, you know, that they can kind of map out where they are. He's Italian, and he's the purpose of this is that one of the big things about having memory, for example, AI having memory finally in these LLMs, is that it helps you continue the conversation and they can pick up where they left off. There's an element of when a baby is born where they don't understand that if they can't see you, they think you're gone, and you can play peekaboo with them, and then it's like, holy shit, this person is appearing and disappearing, and all they're doing is doing this. It's incredible for a baby because they can't wrap their head around the idea that you haven't left because they can't see you anymore, right? That's why peekaboo is universal. Well, robots have a peekaboo problem. That sounds naughty. But it's where, for a long time, if there's something that they're in their scannable zone, they know about it and they care about it, but they couldn't remember the rest of the place behind them. So they would do, you know, if they glanced, they'd have to do a full perimeter scan and then load it, and they have to go. Now they could just look and remember, like you and I can. We're like, okay, what's the room like? Okay, I know basically how far to back up and how far to move forward because I've been in this space before. Okay, how common on the story about Elon leading a group wanting to buy OpenAI? No, it's he's punking them. I don't know if you guys saw Sam Altman's response about how he basically mocked Elon. Elon's trying to slow them down as best he can because Grok sucks. And he's trying to play catch up. So, but that's not happening. Okay, this one I also like as well. So Station A, which is MIT alumni. By the way, when I was a kid, my dad went and studied at a special program at MIT for a period of time about like solar advances and stuff, and he helped build two of the first solar, if not the first totally solar homes in the United States. My dad did the architecture for them. They were built into hillsides in Kentucky, and so they used the environment around them to minimize the heating and cooling costs of it. They set up early solar panels, and they were able to run completely off the grid. And insofar as I know, there's still people still live in them today. The guy who my dad built it for still lives in the house. One day, maybe I'll go down there. I'll talk my dad into going down there with me, or giving me the guy's address, and I'll come and talk to him. But that's where I played Eliza, the chat game when I was a kid that I've talked about. Anyway, so my dad went there, and one of the things he brought back with him was an MIT T-shirt, and it was my favorite T-shirt when I was a kid. Like, I wore it everywhere because I was like, I'm a smarty pants, and I loved my smarty pants MIT shirt. Never went myself, didn't go to college, but obviously it didn't hurt me too bad, I guess. Andrew's got a great question. I'll get to that in 1 second. Thank you, Andrea. And is there a way if I can, let me move this down here. Okay. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay, so this is like a way of like taking routing of power and make it easier for people to know that they're buying clean energy and route it to their place. Like when they're installing clean energy it's just smart. It's just like simplifies the keyboard jockey part of clean energy choices. Great. Now, this is where we really get into the gnarly stuff. New computational chemistry techniques accelerate the prediction of molecules and materials. This goes along with that matter gen that I was telling you about, that they are now going to be able to create biological, not just electronic or material. It's basically ways to fight disease, ways to improve the human body eventually will probably be the primary aspect of it. I mean, I don't know when we'll be able to get an injection one day and it will reinforce your skin against the pressure of deep space, or let you have what are effectively gills when you want to. I wouldn't rule it out entirely. It's a long way off, but it's not out of the question. But the idea that they are now being able to do this, researchers can wring more information out of electronic structure calculations. Back in the old days, the really old days, the task of designing materials was laborious. Investigators over the course of 1,000+ years tried to make gold by combining things like lead, mercury, and sulfur. This is alchemy. Material science, of course, come a long way. For the past 150 years, researchers have had the benefit of periodic table of elements to draw on. And I think this is another version. Yeah, Tokyo Electric Power Company, professor of nuclear energy at MIT and professor of materials and science and engineering, offers the promise of a major leap in capabilities that can facilitate material design. They're not the only, like MatterGen's not the only ones who are doing this, is my point. And then, if you thought the vaccine freak out was bad during COVID, get ready for the new antibody structures that are created by AI specific to a disease and tailored to the human being. By the way, everybody who tells you it's dangerous and bad and awful and a plot and all that kind of stuff, they'll be the first to get it, and they'll lie their ass off just like the vaccine for COVID. They're all going to take it. They're going to take that and the monoclonal antibodies and all that shit that they did under COVID. They're going to do this too. They're going to do it as fast as they can. Because as much as they tell you not to trust it, they're going to trust it right out of the fucking gate. Even if it's untrustworthy, which is, I guess, the ironic part. Now, Andrew was asking a good question, and this is maybe how we settle into the end of the show. How would AI help current Democratic leadership develop a path towards real resistance? Schumer and Jeffries seem to be using weak technology. I would argue that they're not using any in particular, and I don't think necessarily they can, because there's a whole other aspect of like privacy and legality with elected representatives. It's something the DNC needs to do. And there needs to be a digital powwow for the DNC. And I would argue on the down low, that it doesn't need to be a big fucking, round table with somebody, holding a talking feather and beating a spirit drum while everybody sits around talking about whether or not the zeros and ones will be inclusive of zeros that don't think they're ones and ones that don't think they're zeros. Like, it's going to have, the leadership is going to have a fucking meeting. Like they give a shit. It can't be performative or anything like that. They need digital powwow. Sounds hot. I know. I feel like I should buy that URL right now. But so again, in their own campaigns, believe me, Schumer and well, maybe him, not Schumer, but Jeffries for sure, and the younger members of the Democratic caucus in the House, and perhaps even some Democratic senators, will start using a lot of these tools over the next year or so, because they won't have a choice. You'll just get swamped if you don't. The question is, can the DNC get it up and running as fast as they need to? My only worry is the what I would call the illusion of inclusivity that needs to exist for them to feel comfortable with it, because they'll ask all the wrong questions. Like, it can't exclude anybody. It's not how it works. It'll even your conversation about whether or not will be sensitive to people's needs or lived experience or any of that kind of stuff. That's human talk and is not what this is for. Craft the message, use it to tighten the message, and then use it to implement the reach of the message. And it's interesting. Francie just says, give the young ones a chance, new ideas. Okay. I don't know that I qualify as one of the young ones. I'm certainly younger than Schumer, but I'm older than AOC. And so I don't know that necessarily, and all of Elon's team are like 20-somethings, right? Except the ones that are 19. So I don't know that youth is the answer any more than trust your elders. Is it? I don't doubt it, K-Link. Did you check for me? Yeah. So I got some bad news for a bunch of folks on our side of the aisle, which is the old triggers that you could count on of appealing to age, race, sex, or sexuality are out the fucking window. Because, obviously when people say, we need to listen to and respect black women, they're not talking about Candace Owens. And, so everybody jumping, up and down. And again, if you're talking about I guess the Free Palestine crowd maybe will learn their lesson that half the Arabs that they're talking to, or Arab Americans or fellow travelers or whatever, are really just in it for the anti-Semitism, if not more. So you can't just go, you understand, you're brown. It's weird. My biggest pushback to a lot of these things, and I think this is crucial to the argument, is that the word diversity is very misused, both in criticisms of it by the right and support of it by the left. And the reason is because it can mean a lot of different things. But what it's ultimately meant for a lot of people is, I found somebody who talks just like me and believes what I believe, but they look different. That's what they mean. Right? And when it's the other side, it's viewed as tokenism. And when it's your side, it's viewed as diversity. But you're not, none of us are saying, part of diversity is the value of listening to the Blacks for Trump guy. See what I mean? That's not at all what anybody like, and nobody cops to that even for a second, right? I've like, and maybe somebody will surprise me today. I'm wide open, but a lot of times, what the people on, especially in the slacktivist world, not the average person, in the average world, the diversity argument, especially where it already exists, where people aren't, work in an office or around people or have people in their family or whatever that are, from different backgrounds and the like, the concept of diversity doesn't even come up because it sounds like corporate speak for and it's a word like human resources, which sounds really awful if you really break it down, right? And let's see, it just is the world you live in. Well, okay, maybe that needs to attach something. Diversity includes all women. White GOP women forgot. Well, then they didn't. That means, Francie, you don't think it includes what they have to say, right? And I said this the other day on my, on Blue Sky, but like, intolerance of intolerance is tolerance. I'm so tired of these folks going, you're being intolerant of my being intolerant. Like, so you're the intolerant one. Like, okay, fuck off, dummy. It's like, it's not even worth your goddamn time, right? But there is an important aspect of this, is that if you care about diversity and all these kind of things, and that's going to be your, diversity, equity, and inclusion, means everything's equal. You've got to include everybody, and it's got to be diverse. Well, most of the people, even when corporate structures do that, like we're not going to hire, nobody's going to hire like an Italian revolutionary communist in their corporate structure, even though they're white, and they wouldn't expect to hire one. They would hire a black person who just wants to work at whatever Garmin over that person, right? And it's not even a question of diversity or anything. Who's the more diverse person? The black person who trained to work in this job and got this job because this is what they want to do and they actually like the company and they've been thinking about, is that diversity in this environment just because they're black? Or is it the person who thinks totally different? This company shouldn't even exist. Like, that's a level of diversity nobody is for, right? Sorry, if I'm mixed race, I personally don't need DEI. I am DEI. Sure, Alio, sure, I see where that is. No Nazis working at the Holocaust Museum. Exactly. Like that there's a level where the diversity thing runs aground. That ship runs aground. And it's okay to understand that that we're talking about, it's a broad word that covers a limited thing. But the sad part is that most people, when they're talking about it on either side, seem to mean we found one that doesn't look like us, that talks like us. I mean, you could argue that Milo Yiannopoulos and Candace Owens and Blair White and and whomever else, gay, trans, and black, whoever they are, that they found that talks just that hates BLM or is against conservatism or whatever, that's their version of DEI. Look, we've got one that says what we like. See? I mean, look at Trump and his whole, there's my African American. That's what he means. He's trying to prove that we have diversity. Look, he's right there. I mean, it's fucking stupid, but that's what he means, right? And a lot of folks on our side of the aisle, when we're talking about diversity, we're not really talking about people that disagree with us from a different background. We're talking about people who agree with us from a different background. For real. So we don't really mean in the hiring of things, as far as diversity goes in a business, like the concept of lived experience, if it doesn't apply to whatever the job is immaterial to the hiring practices of that company. Because again, nobody's expecting Tyler Perry to hire a bunch of, he's got a really low number of Filipinos working in his organization. There are very few, Asian American Pacific Islander people working on the show Empire. You know what I mean? Nobody's really talking about and what they kind of mean is like enclaves that exist on their own in their own racial homogeny. And until we address that, or until we get past that, or until people are, socially already, integrating to the point where it becomes unnecessary to have that conversation, you're either going to need something that resembles affirmative action to make up for those gaps, or you're going to have, for lack of a better phrase, ghettoization of different groups where they are separating themselves off to have their own version of things because we do our thing and you guys can't understand it because this is our lived experience, and where they are anti-diversity, and they consider their diversity their in-group clique version of things being given a space on a checkerboard as opposed to in the melting pot or in the tossed salad of America, right? You're indignant. Yeah. Jane, are you indignant? I completely understand. So they again, there are times, and this is something that I've been kind of ruminating on lately as they've attacked DEI, where and I'm not talking about, of course, Don, Eric, and Ivanka, who are a problem in and of themselves, but on each of these points, equity, I believe, was a replacement word for equality, because when Democrats were fighting for equality, which seems really normal, especially in the civil rights era and in women's rights, and my whole life I was brought up, equality was the thing. What we're looking for equality, and what we meant was everybody gets the same shot. Nobody's hamstrung just because they're born a certain way or a certain color. If they can show up and do the job, they can get the job, and nobody has the right to tell them they can't if they can do it. Right? And that's what equality meant to me. And then Republicans came in and they saw that this was gaining ground with a lot of people. I think most Americans agree with this. They really do. Even Republicans, if you ask them, whether they carry it out, really believe it one-to-one is another thing. But what they'll admit to in public to save face and not look like a complete fucking bigot is they'll say, yeah, I believe that. I believe that everybody should have an equal shot, right? But what Republicans did was they took the word equality and they made it the outcome, not the starting line. So and they did this with liberal too. Liberal used to mean, we are a liberal democracy. We are based on the idea that people have liberty as a start, the individual rights of a person to define their own character and self, exist inherently in a human being, and the state only has so many things it can do to limit those things. As long as my liberty doesn't impact on somebody else's liberty, fuck off. And that was something that even Republicans seemed on board with, right? There were liberal Republicans and conservative Republicans, right? That kind of stuff. Okay. So, and then eventually they were like, this is all branding. And you can argue whether this was them or, again, a Russian social engineering exercise post-91. I would argue that was a big part of it, and they fell for it, and we acquiesced to it without going, fuck you. Can't rewrite my word. Because they take your empathy and they whipsaw it into whatever they think it should mean. But anyway, so liberal and equality went down the same road, got rebranded into being something negative. That you want to communism, you want to hammer all nails down to the same level. No, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, and whatever. That's where they got that from. And then they effectively killed the word equality for what it actually means. The same thing they did with liberty. Liberty, exactly. And so progressive and equity were born. And progressive, for me, when that first started coming out, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, progressive always meant, I always saw it as the Star Trek liberal. That we, as progressives, were looking for, okay, where's humanity headed? And how do we get there as fast as possible? Obviously, the arc of history leans towards justice, and there's a lot of bumps along the way. But ultimately, according to all these folks, we believe in individual human liberty and all that kind of stuff, right? Traditional liberty, traditional liberal, right? I agree. Me too, Water Goddess. It's a great way to describe me. I'm a liberal. But the word progressive meant kind of, I think for a lot of people, I saw it, and a lot of people saw it as Star Trek liberals. Like in the future, what happens when the cost of human labor goes to zero? What happens then? What does everybody do for a job? I mean, we're talking well beyond UBI or any of this, and this is what AI is bringing upon us. So the word, yes, and I would agree. Atrocious Every Game says, I feel like progressive means fucking nothing since it's been hijacked by Cenk Uyghurs, of the Cenk Uyghurs of the world. I completely agree. The irony is that progressives became the most anti-progress people out there. Any step, they were against incremental progress. Well, I got news for you. All progress that sticks is incremental. All of it. Diet system, exercise, healing from an injury, healing from a heart attack. It's all progressive. It all takes, it's all incremental progress. And if you're against any of that progress, then you're not a progressive. Again, if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're still taking 1 step forward. So shut the fuck up and let's try to make life better for people. But what happened was that word progressive was not destroyed, arguably, by the right. It was destroyed by the left. Largely groups of people, I think, that make their living guaranteeing that progress isn't made because their job is bitching about it. Yes, progress that is not incremental is not sustainable. Exactly. We all raise our children incrementally. There's nobody goes to the gym once and says, I'm done. It's done. So the progressive was not destroyed by the right. It was destroyed by the left, the hyper left. And again, there's a lot of overlap in who these people are. And Cenk and that crowd are effectively right-wingers bullshitting. It's wolf in sheep's clothing. The Bible warns us of such things. And yet, okay. So progressive, though, that's what it meant to me when I was like, I would say in the 90s. The 90s where progressive started showing up, that's what it meant, was Star Trek liberal. How do we take all these things, women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, minority rights, and go, hey, everybody's capable of everything, to the best of their ability, and everybody should be able to start from a starting line that's equal with everybody else, and whatever you do with your life is up to you, but nobody gets to set you back because they don't like your face, your religion, your hat, your color, or your sexuality. Right? That sounds like progress. And if that's where we're going, let's just fucking get there. That's what progressive meant to me. It did not mean that to the people who took it on as a label, largely. Now, my station in Chicago still uses Chicago's progressive talk. And I think, it was born out of that same ideology that I had about it in the meantime, and was not, undermined by those around. And right-wingers have been very comfortable jumping on top of the word and trying to undermine it as well. But it didn't need any help being destroyed. But in that period, equality became equity. And equity was a dual-use word. Equity had value as a word because it was reminiscent of equality, the idea that all people are created equal, right? But you're stealing the term Star Trek liberal. I mean, I think that's Epi Girl. That's where we're headed, right? I mean, I don't think we all have to dress the same unless we're on duty. But equity was not only has the kind of sort of the gravitas of equality to it, but where's the word most commonly used? Oh, excellent. Okay, I will, Andrea. Yeah, I'll rate him in just a couple minutes. Equity also, we use it in terms of real estate. in terms of owning a home, you have equity in this home. You have equity in this country. You have an investment in it that you, A, want to see pay off and is indicative of the hard work and the worth that you've put into it. Right? So it grew as a word. I totally understand the value of using that as the rebranded word for equality. And then Republicans attacked it and turned it into the same thing they said with equality. They did the exact same shit. And nobody pushed back but me. Right? I'm like the only person who's like, guys, this is what they're doing. They're saying it's the finish line. We need to tell them it's the starting line. All I want to do is make sure that everybody gets to the starting line with no fucking, without a ball and chain. Yeah, Biden did. I agree. But I also think, like in terms of the media out here, the media landscape. Free Will. It's a great Rush song. So in talking about these, understand that there are two elements whenever you have a word that's like a key word that you're attaching your movement to, is that the other side is going to rebrand it whether you like it or not. That there will be people inside your organization who think it should go further than it does or not go as far as it should. And those people will also attack that word from within to try and make it go further than you think. And I would argue that the non-binary world, dragged on the trans world a little bit in that argument. And our inability to have honest conversations that protected trans people on our side of the aisle is why we're in the fix we're in this particular situation in terms of those rights going backwards, the lack of progress in those times. So people can hijack your language. So never get attached to the terms you use, the jargon, ever. Because once you do, then the people of ill will, all they have to do is go, I'm going to jump in and take that word, and now I'm in. Now they have to deal with me. And if they dare try to kick me to the curb, I'll just say you're rejecting my lived experience, and you're trying to, I don't know, create a hierarchy of power within the substructures of oppressed and oppressor and that kind of shit. We hear it all the time on our side of the aisle. And I will tell you, yes, it's very annoying, Francie. I will tell you that I also think it's a lie. It's not just annoying. I don't buy it. And the Arab Americans for Trump, who have changed their name to Arab Americans for Peace, is a fantastic fucking example. I agree, Evie's on. Delaware elected a transgender woman to represent us, and the Republicans have disrespected her multiple times. I know. But so have we. Our side of the aisle has disrespected trans people brutally over the last few years by refusing, out of fear of reprisal from slacktivists and bullshitters, to draw clear legal lines that protect trans people from marauders, posers, and lunatics. The rules that Democrats set in place, and I think they did it out of a good place, but were too afraid to get too much into the reeds for fear of blowback, allowed for autogynephiles and pervy straight dudes to pretend to be trans under just by saying so, and therefore denies rights to trans people by allowing people to just kind of assume their identity, doing the exact same thing that Republicans, fear, trans women are doing to real women. We allowed autogynephiles and posers to seize the trans name from trans people. and destroy the reputation and the livelihoods of the trans people that live in this country by not setting standards that safeguard the reality of their circumstance. Because we were too afraid that some activist fuckwad would yell at us and go, you don't know. Well, okay, if I don't know, you don't know. And if you can't set a standard, then there is no standard. So you can't draw a line unless you know what we're putting a boundary in front of or around. So either go work that out, or leave everybody who's got a relatively designed line to work out. So non-binary shouldn't be included. No, it's not that. It's that non-binary aren't included. It's not an inclusive name. It's an exclusive name. It excludes anyone who is on the spectrum of binary. If you're male or female, or trans male, or trans man or trans woman, you're not non-binary. They've given up on that line. It's like they're the sovereign citizens of gender. You can be that way. I don't care, but you don't get to design. You don't get to define the circumstance for trans people. You don't, because you're not a part of it. You really aren't. A trans person, it has body dysmorphia that translates to them feeling they are in the wrong body and then needing to transition from something to something. Non-binary is not a part of that. It might be its own thing. That's totally fine. But it ain't that. So you don't get to jump into the fight of other people because you don't care. All right, KJ Doglove. I'm male. I don't call myself non-binary. I needed to transition. Right, exactly. But the people without definitions don't get to attack other people's definitions. It doesn't work that way. If somebody has a need for a definition, and trans people do, then that conversation is between them and the greater society that recognizes male and female as a part of human sexual dimorphism, which is fine and real and okay, and trans people in their presentation of who they are, for real, have to go through the act of transitioning. Oh yeah, thank you, K-Link. Just in case somebody doesn't know. Autogynephilia is defined as a male's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought or imagine himself as a female. Autogynephilia explains the desire for sex reassignment from some male to female transsexuals. It can be conceptualized by both a paraphilia and a sexual orientation. I don't know if it's a sexual orientation. Because you're not. It doesn't determine who you're oriented towards. You can have that. There can be autogynephiles who are attracted to women and feeling like they are one at the same time, and they get a sexual charge out of the urge, or that they are attracted to men, and part of their attraction in being gay goes through this idea of being what they think is a woman because they are attracted to, I don't know, the naughty nature of drawing of baiting a straight dude into or something like that. But it has nothing to do with trans people, is my point. That's the APA def, yeah. It has nothing, and it's not trans people's burden. An autogynephile is not the burden of trans people, nor is the fluidity of a non-binary person. It's a whole other conversation. These are my opinions, and I'm going to state them fully because I give a shit. I think trans people are real, and I think trans people deserve a status in society that matches their needs and their experience. And anybody who just wants to be a fucking ride-along can fuck off. Because, I don't know, I could kind of feel trans, and I don't know, but that kind of treating it like it's fucking goth or not. I don't feel like my hair should be orange, but I don't know. I like it when it's blonde and not too brassy. Like, if you're putting that much thought into what your gender means to you, you're not a trans person, because they're struggling with it all the fucking time. Does this make sense to anybody? And by the way, if somebody wants to consider themselves non-binary or whatever, I'd love to hear their argument for it. Totally fine. But they don't get to define what trans people go through, because trans people are going through something very specific. and extraordinary. And it's not flippant. And you have to establish lines to protect trans people specifically in their circumstance. They're transitioning, especially when it comes to bathroom usage and all kinds of other things. There are material differences in where they are and where they're going, and the hormone changes in their body, whether or not they have surgery, all kinds of other stuff. That's a lot. But if you're just treating it like, you know, or you believe it to be a non-existent construct, that's fine. But that's more a political and philosophical belief than an internal drive. I will support transgender people's rights to be treated with love and dignity. Exactly. And I don't think this is dignified, lumping them in with other people. I don't think undermining trans people's existence by attaching it to everything that, like, to transvestism even, is the same thing. Does that make sense? Because transvestism is largely temporary when it happens. Right? We're not talking about somebody who's dealing with something transitory, ironically enough. So people always called you a boy even when you were androgynous, when I was a girl. Yeah, well, that's, I mean, and again, that is something people go through, and it's a lot. So it's a worthwhile conversation to have. And here's the thing about it, and this is, I'll close on this because I gotta, like, I've already gone over, but and it's a heavy conversation, and it should be, because it's worth saying because of the greater society and the impact that we in the greater society have on trans people. That we have a responsibility, I think, to have a respectful conversation about their place in the greater society, since we pull all the levers. Instead of, like, I guess you're on your own, and if you can pass, go into whatever bathroom you want. But if we can tell if you're in Texas, you're in deep shit. Like, that's not enough. That's lame. And just going, well, I guess, you know, does it really matter? Does it really matter? I mean, there's a thin line between how some non-binary people, especially the slacktivist class, talk about gender and sexuality. There's a thin line between that and what right-wingers say about it. I mean, you could argue that what they say about, like, a trans person wanting to transition or knowing they need to transition, however you want to word it, doesn't matter, from one thing to the other, that in of itself is, there's no there. I don't know what you're transitioning to. Well, that's the same as, I mean, materially, it's the same impact of saying you can't. You're living in a fantasy land. You can't become a trans, woman can't be seen as a woman ever. It's the same thing. I mean, a non-binary people, well, it doesn't even exist anyways. You can't be seen as it because what is it? While at the same time, using traditional sexual roles like a fucking ping pong with zero argument for the existence of those things. Some days I feel femme, some days I feel masculine, whatever. Well, and I dress this way to show that thing. Well, then you're arguing that those traditional views do work. If you wear a suit and a tie when you're feeling masculine and you wear a dress when you're feeling feminine, you're arguing for traditional sex characteristics. You're saying they do exist. They are a thing. They do express those things. And if you're arguing that they don't, then why would you wear a dress when you feel masculine and a suit when you feel feminine? That's like Jerry Seinfeld saying you can't tell jokes anymore. He's an asshole. Non-binary people argue for the sexual binary, ironically, harder than most, because they'll tell you, I've got feminine hair, I've got girl hair and a male beard and whatever, right? Clothing doesn't have a gender. As a Scotsman, I agree. And again, I feel like society has been playing ducks and drakes with trans people's lives for a very long time. And it's obvious the way the right does it. it's less obvious how the left does it. And I find it gross. So it's something, you know, and maybe nobody's felt comfortable having a full conversation with this because of the kind of slacktivist onliners that come for you if you start having this conversation. But, and maybe I'm in the unique position of, you know, having been straight and on Queer as Folk and getting death threats for being on Queer as Folk and getting activists attacking me in playing the first HIV positive negative relationship, that we played the fears that the characters had about getting HIV and what that meant, and a mother's fear of her son, even though she knows he loves his partner, becoming HIV positive at that time in history. Like, we dealt with all that shit. I caught hell in between shows. We had a show where they were scared, and then the next one they've learned their lesson a week later, and it was about this arc of learning. And in between, in the middle of the arc of learning, the slacktivists everywhere came for us. So it was an important lesson. But just because you use the code words, this is like the learn to code part, I guess. Just because you learn the code words and you can fucking throw on the sheep's clothing doesn't mean I have to assume that you're not a wolf if you act like one. Humans appear to need to criticize and judge other humans. Is this a flaw that will end the race? No, not at all, Yak Time. Don't be silly. Criticism and judgment is also how we differentiate good behavior and bad behavior. It's one of the reasons we exist. We set up a system by which we can criticize and judge. Free speech literally was designed over the century to finally come to fruition in the United States so that we could openly criticize people without a war breaking out. Judgment is a real thing. We have to be, you know, you're allowed, I mean, Jesus Christ, if you believe in consent, you believe in judgment. Judgment itself is, I do not consent this, whatever this is, to enter into my space. We need them. Using them willy-nilly is stupid. You don't live like a fucking 8th grader all the time where you hate somebody because you don't like the band they like. That's dumb. And there's a lot of that going around. Many cultures, the men played women in plays because women were forbidden to act. Oh, well, I mean, in Shakespeare, it was well known for that as well. But it was largely because you didn't want the women hanging around with actors because they'd get laid. And that was the concern. You didn't want to send them on the fucking road with everybody. And also, there's a bunch of countries where they still do. Because women are second-class citizens. Middle East. So, again, consider this. I do not ask that you accept it. I do not ask that you take what I'm saying verbatim and assume that it is correct. Just mull it around with the other things that you believe. And in what I've said, look around at the conversations you see being had over any number of issues, things you actually care about. I appreciate that Yak Time, but I hope I clarified. But run this through your system when these kind of fights come up. And by the way, am I just on Twitch now? Is YouTube gone? Where is everybody? Did I accidentally kick us off YouTube? Is that what happened? We're still there. Okay. Just the Twitch people are the ones talking. Facebook just says sending data, so I don't even know if that one's up. So there you go. Oh, I see you guys. Okay, there you go. Nasty background noise? Uh-oh. Sorry. There's something clicking around. Twitch is better, right? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm getting some like digital stuff. I'll show you my my tartan next time. It's a green and white. I'll show you. I've got a plaque in the other room. So this is. Oh, it's the fan noise. Yeah, I had to turn off the noise cancellation stuff because it was making my shit dip. Hold on, let's see if I can kick this up. Maybe it'll take out some of that. Yeah, I've got a rattly fan. It's okay. So yeah, McGee, MacGough. So just ruminate on what I've said. And take stuff with a grain of salt and understand that half the time online, you're not even arguing with a person who really believes what they say they believe. Give yourself a break and go, this motherfucker, wait a minute. How do I even know this person's real? Or that they're not just trolling or bullshitting? Give yourself at least that, that suspension of disbelief. Or it'd be suspension of belief in this case, I guess. Think about it. It's interesting the conversation headed in this direction. But these are the kind of conversations, both on my Substack and other places, I'm going to try to move forward as we kind of clear the decks of the people who I think were fucking around during the election cycle. And we're in their find out phase, while I still go after the Republicans for being full of shit. So, that said, I will see you guys later on. Take care of yourselves. Like, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, support the show. And I'm going to jump over and see if I can do a raid. Get that started in just one moment. Share the show. Super chat's always helpful. I don't have the Venmo up, do I? No, sorry. See you guys this afternoon.